Okay, this is middle of the week. What's the date? July 9 in Poughkeepsie, New York. It's the Soundpainting Think Tank number 28. And my name is Walter Thompson. And we're going to have, we have a group of people here asking me questions about sound painting. I created sound painting 52 years ago. The first time was in Woodstock, New York, just a little bit of history. I created it in real time during a performance in 1974 in Woodstock. And it's grown to a language of more than 1,500 signs. So today we're gonna, people are gonna, from the think tank, a think tank is, this is think tank number 28, and people from all over the world, sound painters from all over the world come here to share ideas, develop the language, create, relationships for doing concerts together or teaching together or discussing about how sound painting works in social work or how sound painting works in education or how sound painting as a tool works in performance. So sound painting is a multidisciplinary live composing sign language. It's not a style of art. It's simply a tool, the same way a hammer is used for all kinds of ways. We rarely will open up an egg with a hammer, but you could open an egg with a hammer. So, so the tool, the hammer is used in certain ways, like sound painting is used in certain ways. It doesn't replace like writing music or text for actors or choreography for dancers or some kind of preparation for visual installation. It doesn't replace that, it's something else. I would say sound painting in the scale of, like we have composition, choreography, whatever you want to call it, same thing, fully notated, so to speak, fully choreographed, all the way to open form improv. And sound painting kind of lies in the middle. And because of that, there's a lot of questions about, well, how do you do this, how do you do that, etc. So it's a fairly new language as languages go, 52 years. It's not very old for a language. It's being used all over the world. And as it's being used all over the world, questions come up. So that's what we're here today is to, I'm going to answer questions. They're going to try to stump me. And we have members from the Sound Painting Think Tank, which has about 50 people, in the think tank this year. So, a question from anybody and also for you out there that might be in the streaming world, you can send in a question. Is that right? Can they, Amanda? Yeah, send in a question. Like, what is the difference between sound painting and a strawberry? You might get a funny answer from me about that. Yeah, question, anybody?
I can start. Can I?
Are we?
Can you hear me?
Did you turn it on?
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, good on.
Sorry? Yes, good. Okay, sorry. So I was wondering about specifically dancers and actors. Do you have tips for being able to be seen as a sound painter, or things that you relay during rehearsal for them to see you? And kind of a side question, if you're in neutral and you can't see, what do you do as a performer?
So if you're neutral, so you're being blocked? Maybe?
Yeah, someone's just standing right between you and the sound painter.
Right, so often in sound painting, the sound painter will have everybody seated. It's like a kind of common orchestra sort of look, and then that's a very standard way of setting up the stage, and then you ask the actors or dancers, whoever, to get up and move. And if someone moves in front of somebody, let me know I'm answering the question correctly. In sound painting, we call that a mask. So if there's a dancer in front of you, Brian, or an actor or somebody, then you don't really want to look around, because we say in sound painting that's visually screaming. You go, oh, I'm here, don't forget me. Well, the sound painter, he, she, they, should know. They're the composer. They see there's somebody in front of you. So, and you use the language. Like if there's a trumpet player that's playing this quadruple forte, you might be trumpet one, just bring him down, using the language instead of me going up to that person and saying, shh, quiet. We don't do that. So there's somebody standing in front of you, you use the language, maybe take this to bring them down, or you do directions fader and move them this way, or you can even say whoever it is, dancer 2, slowly exit, they'll go back to your chair. And this way you reveal. And a really cool one is, so let's say you're playing clarinet and you're playing away and you're masked. That's a gift for a sound painter to go, oh, okay, Brian's not going to see what I do, but I'm going to reveal that, and it's going to be this like thread of sound that sticks out, you know. So I go whole group off simply, and then there's Brian. By the rule, if you don't see it, you don't do it. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to see the sign from the sound painter. You heard the off. You know everybody stopped, but you didn't see me do it, so you keep going. And then that reveals what you're doing, and that's a beautiful moment to, okay, that's what I have, this thin line, and that's the direction now that I move my composition. So does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Preguntas?
You know, I was wondering whether I should ask this. I was curious about the story of how the fuck you fader came into the practice.
You mean the asshole fader?
Oh, asshole fader.
Yeah, that's a real, people, a lot of times this is for everybody, this is the asshole fader, right? You'll see in workbook 3, I've written a number of workbooks on sound painting. If you look at workbook 3, the asshole fader is actually realized by a dancer, there's another dancer sitting next to her, and they're in the chair, and I forget what I was asking for, but then I said, I think it was dancer 2, relate to dancer 3, and I put the asshole fader up here, and I said, slowly enter. And what she did was she just got in their way and kind of stopped all of the things she was doing, So that's one way it could be used. And with an actor, in theater, of course, we go to movies, we look at things on YouTube, and we are we going to speak like we don't curse in theater? In theater, you curse. In films, you curse. You can be a jerk. Like one of the, you can be a combination of like kind of a low status and a high asshole. And an actor like Jack Nicholson is absolutely fantastic with that. He can be very but such an asshole. So the asshole fader is not there to be funny. And a lot of times I work with the public, and I rarely will use the asshole fader towards the public. I use it towards the group that I've been rehearsing with, and it's a way to ask an actor to be an asshole, simply put. And you need that in theater. You have to go from, oh, they're so kind and so caring and so, all the way to the real jerk. We need that range the same way we have that range in the other disciplines. So the asshole fader, well, the sign is obvious, and we just put it on the fader arm. So Scarlett, it was a necessity for me to be able to do that.
Well, that's interesting because I was always curious if that came out of integrating clown, but it's nice to know that was actually from a dancing practice.
Yeah, dancing. I think it wasn't. I used it to show it with dancers in the workbook. Just wound up that way. But we rarely do it with musicians. It could be used to create a musician who is playing without any care of anybody else. But I rarely do that as a composer. I'll rarely use it. I use it with actors and dancers, and visual artists too, who could do some kind of graffiti in some kind of way, but it really started in theater.
I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the basic description of what sound painting is. I know it's changed over the years. It started in a certain way, right, and then it's developed and changed. Can you give us a little bit of the history and why it changed and how it changed?
Yeah, I mean, I created sound painting in 1974 in Woodstock. I was just out of Berklee School of Music, was in Woodstock studying with the great composer Anthony Braxton, and taking advantage of the creative music school they were let out for the summer. And there was all these wonderful musicians and dancers, but no actors around. Sorry to say. And so I formed an orchestra, and I had a few people write for it. Usually it was fragments of music. We had 7 dancers. I think most of them from the New York City Ballet. and they were up here. They were up in Woodstock, and I asked them to just relate to the music on their own freely. And so different people wrote fragments of music, and then they conducted their own piece. And then I got up we had maybe 25 musicians, 7 dancers, you know. And I organized 3 performances at the Woodstock Guild of Craftsmen in downtown Woodstock, New York, on Tinker Street. And during the first performance, when I got up to, conduct my piece, there were big sections where you would improvise. And the rules of the improvisation, so to speak, was to make a relationship to the notation. So that's called thematic improvisation, not basing it on chord changes or any kind of structures, based on themes, you know. And so we got to a certain point where the first soloist is going to come in, a trumpeter. I know you guys know the story, but probably you people out there don't. But so the trumpeter it comes time for him to take a solo, and he just takes off everywhere. You know, he's just gone, not paying any attention to what I had asked for. And I became a little bit frustrated without showing the group that. And I thought, well, what can I do? You know, what can I do to make this work? And that's when I went, you, long tone, play, and it worked. They recognized this. Synesthetically, that's a shape. What does it sound like? They did it. And I was like, whoa, that works, you know? And then a few minutes later, I tried, okay, you, like this, thinking, okay, it'd be like, you know? So and I said, do it, and they did it. Because it's also very, symbolic of the result. That was the birth of sound painting, and for many, many, many years, I continued my studies with Anthony Braxton, and I moved down to New York City, formed an orchestra. And the language was full of downtown, musicians, and fantastic musicians, and great improvisers. And I started bringing the language to them, and it was a way to guide improvisation. So as I was guiding improvisation, I was also, I found out about Butch Morris, who had a language called conduction. And, we became a little bit like clashing with each other. 2 languages at the same time. Mine's better than yours better than mine. And, I know. So I had spies, and I would find out Butch had created a new sign, and I'd go home and create 20. So not to go off on a tangent too much, but Butch and I became dear friends the last 5 years of his life. His language conduction is fantastic, and they're the 2 really live composing sign languages that are out there that are for more than one discipline, whereas Santiago Vasquez has ritmos de señas, and that's mainly for working with percussion. So as all those years, long-winded answer, and all those years were many, many years, it was guiding improvisation. I notated a lot. I would guide the improvisation in the open form improv sections. Then I kept creating more signs. And at one point I was like, wow, okay, what? I have like massive amount of signs now. It seemed like a lot to me at the time. It was probably around 300. There's more than 1,500. But at the time, 300 is a lot, because when we compose, as you know, we might use 20 or 30 signs, period, for our compositions, But here it is, there's all these kind of reasons to have this kind of sign and that kind of sign. And when that started to happen, I looked at it as a composition language. Then I realized I was, really asking a question. A sound painter doesn't control. We ask a question. We go, whole group, long tone, pianissimo, play. And now, Scarlett by some chance comes into pointillism. Who knows why? It's just a misfire in a way. The rule is wrong and strong, keep doing what you're doing, When you're not sure what to do, so Scarlett would keep going with the pointillism while the other ones are doing long tone, and then I take that in, I might support what she's doing, Act 1, continue with this, etc. And then I use that to go on somewhere else. So as it started to have those kinds of solutions, I realized it was a composing language. And that's when, in a way, I was writing a lot, and all of a sudden I wasn't writing very much, and I felt like I was cheating. I was signing, and I felt like I wasn't a composer anymore. Because, when I created scanning from watching in soccer, we say here in the States, when they go up and down for the wave, I saw that one time on TV, and I said, wow, how would you compose that And I tried, and I said, you know, F that. I'm going to just use my arm like this, you know. So anyway, I got to the point where it was a composing language, and then my head shifted, and I just felt like I wasn't a composer anymore. I was cheating, and that was because it came easy to me. My father always said to me, and my mother, if it comes easy to you in the arts with what you're doing, Walter, go hard at that, but don't forget the stuff that's more difficult. Focus on that also, because that'll strengthen the stuff that comes easy for you. So then after some time, I realized I wasn't down on myself. I was really composing live. Pregunta.
Yeah, Scott had mentioned before visual artists, and I would be curious, like, I have a limited amount of signs that, I mean, obviously most signs are applicable also for visual arts. I would be curious to hear if you, like, what are the signs that you personally as a sound painter are inspired by when you sign a visual artist? Like the things where you're like, ooh, this is usually inspiring a visual artist that I'm working with, or I find that interesting because it has a component of like randomness or surprise, or a component of like, I know what I'm expecting. Like, what are things that you in your practice are using as a sound painter for visual artists?
Yeah, great question. The visual arts is the richest discipline in sound painting. It's not usually a performing discipline, although there is performance art, you know, coming out of the days of Fluxus movement and all that. But rarely will a visual artist be in a performing ensemble, but they are in sound painting. The ones, being raised in a visual arts family, my father was an abstract expressionist painter, so I grew up around visual artists. My first composition lesson was really at the Art Students League when I was just a boy. And I was painting and had great teachers, Arnold Blanche and Bruce Dorfman, both very excellent teachers. So I have a background in the visual arts also, and also in theater and also in dance, and that's why sound painting is multidisciplinary. I just didn't randomly say I want to, you know, be a hybrid composer. It was who I was. A hot spot is a place for a visual artist to have a box or more on the stage. To answer your question, Gail, so I can have hot spots where the visual artist can reach into literally a box. So if I go whole group pointillism, you know, the visual artist can be a little bit more delayed because they might have to reach down and grab something. But so then they have a box that has the responses to the basic first 40-something signs. Reach down and grab pointillism, boom, and maybe they just do it once. Depends on what they have. You know what I mean? So the hotspot is really interesting. And, you know, hotspot, change hotspot, go to the next one, etc. The visual artist runs out of material, they automatically on their own go to the next hotspot. So that's one I like to work with a lot. You could work with the color wheel, asking for specific colors, like, you know, I want to have whatever it is, improvise with color wheel, you know, 1, and maybe that's yellow. You assign that yourself. That's another one. Installation, to install something, to have a installation arts started in Woodstock, really, or New York, with Ava Hess back in the 60s. I was just a little boy and I was in love with her. Her husband lived on the same property where we had a house, and she was this beautiful woman with long black hair. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. I was 8. There's like Ava Hess, you know. So she was really the founder of installation art. So I've been surrounded by installation art. So a lot of times working with visual artists, they could be painters, you know, or videographers, etc. But a lot with installation artists, you know. So Laurie's working a lot with installation, you know. So that's the thing. This means to install something that is previously thought out. The sound painter can know it, that what it is or not, you know. So I would say those are the 3 basic things. But the one thing about working with visual arts is that they can be a little bit delayed, you know. And also if you say something like, imagine the visual artist is A painter, the public doesn't see the canvas or the paper. So there, you ask for whole group long tone pianissimo play, this part would mean the size of the line. A line can be anywhere, it could be circular. But imagine, so it's a canvas, and you're going to leave that long tone out there for a long time. So if the visual artist is doing this, for 1 minute, the canvas is full. So the visual artist has a choice of just making one gesture if they want to, So there's a lot of different rules for the visual arts.
Yeah, I think that was part of the question.
Yeah.
Speaking, is there default duration?
Yeah, exactly.
If the artist. Oh.
We'll get the microphone over there, make sure
That's what it was making me think of. Is there a default duration for an installation, or is it the sound painter is just taking care of that composition and goes back to paint the next thing?
There could be both. You could default it, of course you could use the default fader, or you could have said, in this case to Lori, when you install, install within 30 seconds. So, they can be both. They can be a default or not. Yeah, Shamu, come on up. Leonore, you can come up and join. You guys. Grab a chair.
Hi, Walter. I have a question about hotspots. So I've only ever used one, which is my station. And I know that there are moments where you can have several hotspots set up. Question, and it seems like that would be a really rich offering because you're getting a different vantage point, a different perspective of this person. How do you sign visual artist, go to hotspot 2, or how do you get the person there?
Yeah, right, exactly. You could, there's a number of ways of doing it. One would be to say, normally what I do is just say, ask the visual artist before the performance begins. When the stuff runs out, your material runs out, just in a pedestrian way, just walk normally over to the next hotspot. Don't bring any character into it, unless that's part of, and I know that and you know that and you're going to do that. Otherwise, you just calmly walk over there so it doesn't bring any attention to you, and then the other one would be, just change hotspot. It's not that I guess. Change hotspot. Or you could say, hotspot 2, in case you have more than one, or more than 5 or something. You number them, is my point. And you could have a bunch of them around the stage. So as you're installing or doing things or leaving stuff, on the stage, you create your the stage, and the people on the stage are your canvas. So as you're doing that, it's more interesting to have hotspots in different locations, so you can at the end fill your canvas, not just a hotspot stage right or stage left, have them placed around different places.
Thank you, that makes a lot of
You're
sense.
welcome.
Maybe we could try that Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Move to
I've never
another.
done that before.
Yeah. It's one of the, working with visual artists, it's one of the more complicated disciplines, because like all the disciplines, if you're a musician and you want to work with actors, dancers, visual artists, then start learn about a little bit of their language. Like musicians learning what does stage left mean and that downstage, or learning with dancers, what does it mean to travel? Just learning some different things, like how do these disciplines work, etc. That's every sound painter has to do that, and to become a multidisciplinary composer. You're not leaving it up to the dancers or the actors or the musicians or the visual artists to create your composition. In the end, that's your composition, And who are you? You're a musician, and who are you as a visual composer? It doesn't just come to you. You have to develop that if you don't have it in you. You learn how to develop it by different ways of studying that discipline.
I have a bit different question. Like you created, I think, 95, 6, 7, 8% of the signs, we can say. But there's still this other few percent with other signs that you're also using because it's a language. And you said also that in the first 20-something years, you were the only sound painter in the world, in a way. And then you opened up this whole thing, which was I think a great decision, and I'm very grateful for that, of course, sitting here. But I mean, how you feel with this development, that there are a lot of people taking it and bringing it to a direction where maybe different, or maybe it's on. I mean, we try to maintain the language as much as possible in a universal way, but what is your personal feeling about it? I mean, not like, how do you feel, Walter?
Well, I used to have an army of sound painting police. They'd had cattle prods, and they were very strong, and they would come to your home and shock that out of you, you know. No, that's a great question, Shamu, because in the end it was my baby, you know, and so think tanks. It was Todd Riddles who asked me in maybe '95, and Todd's a great musician. He asked me, and was playing violin in my group, and he asked me to teach him sound painting. I said no. He you know, he kept at it, and I finally said yes, and then that opened up something for me when I started to teach him. And then Sarah Weaver came along, great composer, great musician. Sarah Weaver lives in New York City, and she really like took it on. You know, she was just getting out of the University of Michigan, so Todd was the first one to ask me, and I think, you know, I think Sarah was the first one to just like leave everything else aside and focus on sound painting. So she really dove into it. So but going back to the question, as I started to share the language, first you had to sign a contract with me. The first think tanks, people that came would sign a contract, like Bertolt Brecht, we used to do. Sign a contract with me. You know, he would do that for his friends too, you know. So sign a contract, you won't use it without my permission, etc. Because a really good lawyer friend of mine said, you know, you should register this and own it and license it. So here I am, sign a contract with me, and everybody was like, kind of like, some people okay, some people like, what are you doing? No, I'm not signing a contract with you. Are you nuts? And so I kept that alive for a few years, right? Because it's my language, you know. And then and I'm not, you know, I'm not a capitalist. I'm a socialist, you know, at heart, with a little capitalism in there. And so I thought after a while, this is silly. You know, this is silly. And I got rid of all of that stuff, the trademark and the registration, all of that crap. I said, forget this. It's not a language if I own it. So I just let it out to people. And when I did that, of course, I remember once my workbook was published online accidentally, kind of it drive me crazy. There was published online by someone in London who had published it, who had given it to some other members of his group, and then it wound up getting out on the internet, and I contacted him directly, hey, you know, and he was very sweet and nice and took it off, you know. But, so my books are protected. All the writings are copywritten. I've written 7 books, so they're all copywritten. And that's what I own. But the language, after 3 years, I just got rid of all of that and let it go so I could see what would happen. Language has to belong to people. I'm going to learn from you. You get to a certain point in the language, even in a few days, you might come up with something that I never thought of. Others come up with things I never thought of. Then it becomes a language. And so sound painting today, even though maybe I created 90% or a little bit more, it's growing with new signs. And there was a point where there was a committee. You had to put your sign to a committee. That lasted about 2 weeks for me. Like France did in the 1700s, let's control the language, You can control language. Language is alive and moving. And so I studied the English language to understand the growth of language, because in the 1500s, English almost disappeared, 15 or 1300s. It almost disappeared till one king brought it back. Everybody was speaking French in the nobility. The nobles were speaking French. The English language almost vanished. And when it came back, it had 5,000 French words, 3,000 Spanish words, numerous Arabic words, numerous Swedish words, like asunder is Swedish. And, and I looked at that, and I was watching videos on YouTube and just studying the language and reading about it. And then I understood how languages grow. But until that point that I really understood, you got to let it go. The think tanks are a way to codify it and keep it kind of universal, but you just have to let it go. And when you let it go, it becomes a language. And then you learn. And then it spreads around if it's useful as a tool, and and owning it would be death to it. And sometimes I go back to the United States. Here I'm in the States now. And people will say to me, I won't mention names, but friends will say, "You didn't register that? You're not making money off of that? You're not licensing that?" No, I'm not. Why would I? It's not going to grow. Yeah, but you could be making millions. No, I would not. I don't care about that. What I care about is having a tool out there that helps people foster creativity in the individual. A sound painter can make a composition with anybody, whether it be students in a classroom up to professional performers. I've had a sound painting performance in Turkey. I had a dentist in my group. Recently in Spain in a workshop, I had an accountant. She had never been anything creative before. There she was, surrounded by a bunch of really fine performers. I had to go up here and ask, "Do you have theater background?" Because of her ability to respond in sound painting. No, I have nothing. She was brilliant. So sound painting is making art with people. And that's when I realized it was really more of a language. It's like, let them make art too. Let me learn from them. So it took a long time. It's a good question. And now I disbanded the sound painting police department. I got rid of them. Yeah, I got rid of them. Yeah, AI, that's another thing. I'm looking forward to an AI sound painter who sound paints an AI orchestra. Don't wish too hard. Don't wish too hard. Question.
Okay, this is kind of a specific sign question.
Sure.
Is there a way to sign for a whole group, play whatever you want?
Yeah, exactly. Yell that out. Shaman, what was it? What's the answer?
That's the.
Oh, no, kind of. Yeah, that's one way. You could just go whole group offer, and that's kind of play whatever you want. But what about if you want to say, that's like play whatever you want, like in an improv choice, right? It would be universal gesture.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So then you can choose any. So this means universal, and you can use this is gesture, and you could say universal gesture, whole group universal gesture, or play whatever you want. Could also be whole group improvise, right? Or it could be whole group and have them be in touch with each other. Whole group improvise, develop organically. You know what I mean? Or kind of even play what you want, but a little bit more aggressive would be whole group make a mess. That's dangerous.
I had a student ask me once, could you do whole group play? And I'm like, well, no, because technically that's not as syntactically correct. So
the language of sound painting uses the English words to name the signs most of the time. There are some that are in French. So you can, who, what, how, when is the syntax. Who, the whole group, right? What, a long tone. How, pianissimo. You don't always, if you don't say how, then the group chooses the dynamic or the tempo. And then you say when. And there's a bunch of over 1,500 signs. I lost track of the question. Say it again. What was?
no, it's just how do you sign play anything?
Yeah,
And
so you
answered
don't,
it.
so exactly, thank you. So you don't go there, so that follows the syntax. And even though you might be teaching an improv class, you could walk into the class and say, whole group play, or everybody play, please, everybody play. Everybody being like whole group. But in sound painting, I would be standing up to sign this, right? I would say whole group play, there's no what. Mm-hmm. So even though the words are English, they don't mean the same thing as sound painting, like anaphora or anaphora. That's a poetry term, but in sound painting, it's something else. In theater, status is one thing, but in sound painting, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit of a twist of what it is in theater. So you can't say whole group play. You follow the syntax. Things like and in sound painting, you don't use it like the English word. You don't go like woodwind 1 and dancer 2. No, you just do woodwind 1 one, dancer two. The and is a way to link content. So even though it's and in English, you and you, not in sound painting, it's a link between two or more content, and it's performed a certain way. So that's really important to know about the language. A lot of people come to the language and they think the English word describes what the sign is. And that's not true.
Specific sign question, pretty basic. Yesterday you signed us a whole group meltdown, but it was only part of the ensemble playing. What was your expectation? You wanted that we all started to playing a meltdown, or only those who are playing?
Did I say whole group meltdown?
You said whole group meltdown. Yeah. And I started to play and I did something. Because
Okay. All right. So now it's important to know that some signs are content and some are modifiers. And in fact, that's a modifier.
Yeah.
The same way I can say whole group off if there's only two people playing. It's just a way to make sure I don't have to sign you and you off. It's fast. So when I say whole group melt, it's only for the ones playing because it's a modifier. It's the same way as I have 5 talking out of 10 and I say whole group this. Yeah. It's only ones performing. So it's just that. But wrong and strong, Shamu.
yeah, I was
So-
super wrong and strong.
This is so it's so important because when you do that, and I recognize that, it doesn't, the mantra, so-called mantra, I'm not sure I care for that word, but for this, but it's basically that we say as a live composer, we want nothing, we accept everything. If you want in live composing, go home. It's not going to happen.
Go home and write it down.
Go home and write it down. Exactly. Live composing is like life. You think you know what your next week is going to be like? You're planning on good weather. You have a barbecue outside. It rains. Hurricane comes, no barbecue. Sound painting is like a barbecue going bad sometimes, You think it's going to happen and it doesn't, just go with it.
I do have a follow-up question on this. Biggest meltdown for dancers is body meltdown, right? So a dancer that is off would not melt down on their chairs.
No.
Or would they?
No, because it's a how. If they're not moving.
Yeah.
If
So
they are moving, they would melt out of their chair and down to the floor.
yeah. Okay. And if they're in silence?
If silence is a content.
I mean, yeah,
If you're in something, if you were like stuck in like a
silent freeze, continue.
like a silent freeze, right? The silence.
Then you would melt down.
You could melt because silence is content.
Okay, cool.
You're modifying the content.
Yeah, so you can ask the whole group. This may seem like, what in the world are you talking about? But if you say whole group improvise with silence. Now, in the sound painting language, silence is the most dominant content with that phrase and is used the most. But you enter with your discipline too, a little bit here and there. That's what improvise with silence is. And something that's like not possible to do, a nonsense phrase would be whole group, improvise with silence closed. Because this is to close the development parameters. That means there's only silence, there's no development beyond it.
So you just stay.
No, you do nothing.
Yeah, you just sit there.
You just sit there, right. You just sit there. But if it's improvised with silence, that's your main content. Like you sit there, you're an actor, you're just sitting there. Shut the door, please. It's much too hot in here. Much, much too hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're really working with silence. Go back to neutral. It's silence for actors, dancers, is you going back to neutral, but you're still active.
Yeah.
You're in it.
Yeah. Right now I'm thinking about development rate.
Yeah.
And that improvise rather than when you were doing
That's right,
something.
rather than develop, right, right. So anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent, but you can improvise with silence. Go back to your question for a second, Gail. What was the
Well, I
question?
think you
I answered it?
answered
Okay,
yeah,
great.
which was like, if you're off, you don't melt down, but if
That's
you're
right.
in silence, you and that is content, because that is content,
Yeah.
you would react to the meltdown.
Right, and off on my tangent. That's silence is the content with my examples, right?
Sorry, just because I think earlier once you said that it could be a shortcut to say that whole group step freeze play. If they don't play anything, it's like a shortcut of whole group pointless step freeze play something. Then they start immediately with some step freeze material as a shortcut. Meanwhile, that is also like a modifier in a way, or
Yeah, okay, what you're asking, Shamo, is you're saying like whole group stab freeze. There's nothing going on, right?
sorry.
There's nothing going on, right?
No, it's silence, total
We're in
silence.
silence now. So imagine this.
Yeah.
You know, whole group, stab freeze, nothing's going on, and then play. There's nothing to stab freeze, right? Will you, as a performer, create a stab freeze? Like just kind of, like you were playing something before, kind of
Yeah.
mimic being stab freezed?
I think that was the answer.
The interesting thing about this language is you can change the rules a little bit with a sign called default. A default is a way to, give different rules to a sign. I wouldn't do that with this and change long tone to mean pointillism. But I might change the default of that so I can immediately get a stab freeze kind of repetition, I'd have to think about that phrase. Maybe there's something missing there. Yeah, I would say maybe it's a whole group improvise stab freeze. So then what it is a combination.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Oh, that's what I said?
Back in 2012, yes.
I did?
Yeah, exactly.
You're consistent.
So maybe
Wow.
I just thought maybe that can be also like that. But
Right, the improvised stab freeze. And now it works.
yeah, that's
But you were trying to stump me, I see. Yeah, because you would not go whole group. I was talking about defaults, but as I was talking about defaults, you could redefault it. And then I said, nah, you really wouldn't do that. You would just simply say whole group improvised stab freeze. But like I was saying before, and I didn't finish it, you could say whole group, stab freeze default 2, which means creating a stab freeze with that. I wouldn't do that. It exists in the language to do that, but it's like, trying to drive a car backwards by looking forwards, and not looking backwards. It doesn't work really very well.
This is a little bit of a history question. I've come into sound painting through Irondale as an actor and was one of those folks who came in more of an actor than before musician. And Irondale is has been around for a long time, so when you are in the community, there's a lot of folklore. So I was very curious about if you could share with us how you got into Irondale, and that I think sprung a lot of different ensembles in especially New York City.
Yeah, Irondale, a wonderful theater group that's been together for a long time, directed by Jim Neeson and Terry Grease, the two people that are at the root of Irondale. And I've always, I studied acting at the Woodstock Playhouse when I was 13 and 14 and all that stuff. And I was always interested in working in theater. So along with the other stuff I was doing with my orchestra, I was the musical director of the Irondale theater group, Irondale Ensemble. And they had me come in to do a sound design. So I did some sound design, worked with someone who was good at, working with tapes and things like that. And I composed something, and I did a piece for them. I don't know if it was Peter Panic. I'm not sure I forget what it was, but it was a really cool piece that it was up in some loft downtown Manhattan. And that was how I got into it, through Hollis Hedrick, my dear friend. Yeah, Hollis, and percussionist in my group for a long time, and business partner with the orchestra. And so he brought me into it because he was friends with Terry. That's how I got into it. And then I was very fortunate to work with them and write many musicals for them, including Degenerate Art, or Entartete Kunst, which was based on what Hitler did with the Expressionist artist after he came into office. Hitler didn't go after anybody. The first person, or the first group of people he went after, believe it or not, was the Expressionist. Within 2 weeks, he was pretty much devastating the entire movement himself. So this piece was based on that. So that's how I got into it. And I stayed with them for a lot of years. And now my nephew Sam is the musical director.
I was going to ask, or maybe push back slightly, but you mentioned
Pushback.
Yeah.
Oh, here we
Yeah.
go.
You mentioned whole group improvise play. Yesterday you said you usually only end improvisation with finish your idea, and you only do that for an individual. So would you have to finish? You know.
Oh, I see. Yeah. It's this sign, finish your idea, right, is for the respect of a soloist. So if I ask,
Oh, yeah.
if I say woodwind 1, that's you, Brian, improvise, slowly enter. I'm not going to do this because I wouldn't do play. It's kind of like, okay, Brian, now, go running now. It's just too aggressive, young sound painters, young in the language, will make that kind of mistake. You want to give them the respect to get started. So I say, woodwind 1, improvise. Now I have a soloist and I do stuff. I'm listening to you, or I'm watching a dancer, or I'm listening to an actor and watching, whatever. But you're a soloist. In that moment, we're kind of sharing the composition. I'm very aware of you. What you're doing is giving blood to the composition, And we have a bit of sharing the composition because I'm really paying attention to what you're doing. You're a soloist, and you're deep into what you're doing. And the last thing I want to do is to interrupt that flow and cause you to mistrust me. So you'll never go as deep as you could. So if I don't let you have the freedom to go as deep, and we don't say anything about let, this asks you that. It asks you, go as deep as you want if you're a soloist. If it's a whole group, so you're in there going really deep into what you're doing, I'm not going to just come in there and shut the door on you and take you out, because you'll never go that deep again. So then what I say is woodwind 1, finish your idea. And for those that don't know it, that's 1 minute and 30 seconds to wrap up what you're doing, to finish your idea. So that's respect for the soloist. So to go to your question, if I say whole group improvise, there's no one person there, That's just a way to create some kind of whole group improvise with a 20-piece group, multidisciplinary, and say, play like this. That's a way to create a fabric that then you want to say something like, woodwinds, actor 1, continue rest of the group off. It's a way, and then see what's revealed from what they're doing with their improvisation. And then maybe you take that in your anaphora, or you cycle this. So you set up a motion that's more rich and intertwining, so then you can compose with that. So I would never do that to an individual soloist. Like when you're soloing, I would never look at you and say, woodwind 1, and stab freeze you during your solo. Your solo is completely yours. No one in my world, and when I teach people, do not interrupt the soloist, because that's a role that you have to fill. And so that's why this gesture is for the respect of the soloist, a soloist.
Yeah. Now I remember you said that yesterday. If you have like 5 improvisers.
Yeah, because it's their space. There's not enough space for them to be a true soloist. It's taken up by others. So they're not really truly soloing. Like if John Coltrane was soloing and I was sound painting John Coltrane, in the middle of his solo I cut him off, he would never work with me again,
And then one more, hopefully quick kind of side question is there a kind of official written nomenclature for sound painting? Like
Yes.
if you want to write out, okay.
Yeah, there is several. I started one with how do you say it? A job, a commission. Why can't my English? So, Boozy and Hawks came to me and asked me to write a sound painting piece where a conductor could use it. Sound painter's not a conductor, composer. So they want me to write something conductors can use. So for chorus, it's called Colors for Chorus is the name of the piece. And it goes on the music stand of everybody in the chorus. And then the conductor has that. And it's a notation system on a 30-second timeline with rectangle boxes that contain the who, what, how. And I think the wind was below the box. And that's the notation system, one of the notation systems that I developed for all the signs. It's fully developed. But it's a way to write down the language and to make a more traditional composition with the sound painting structures. And then there's aerographs, Etienne Roland, and there's a bunch of other people working on that have their own notation system. My daughter, Kaylee, who's at the think tank, has in the evenings has started her own notation system. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So in sound painting, the language is one thing. How you notate it, you can do that for yourself, to come up with your own. So there's numerous notation systems for sound painting, including what Shamu had done. Shamu had a wonderful one yesterday that he showed us, and was the notation system. So I don't want to learn the language. You want to speak sound painting, learn it. It's like any language, learn it. It protects itself. If you're not very good at it and you go out teaching and then all your students are going out to teach also and they have like really bad habits in the language, there's so much of it around the world, it will correct itself. It's the same thing as French or Swedish, you learn a little bit of Swedish and you go out and try to be a Swedish teacher. Well, the language exists, and eventually those people that are doing it incorrectly will bump into the real language and realize, oh no, I don't know what I'm talking about, So the language protects itself. So anyway, I don't want to say, here's sound painting, fully codified, please learn it this way. And I don't want to, so they could be universal, so you can travel to China and do it, or travel to Israel and do it, or travel to Uzbekistan and do it. It's all the same everywhere. But I don't want to say to people, here's the notation system. That's too much for me. You come up with your own one, because probably it's going to serve a need that mine won't serve for you.
It's also different needs exist, so how precise you notate, you just give yourself signs and so on. I have two questions. Shall I go one by one?
I want you to pile them.
I can pile them. Well, the first question is about, you said that the question is how you as a multidisciplinary composer on stage, composing a multidisciplinary piece, divide your attention, or you don't divide your attention, but you have any technique or you have any advice for us who are not so good with that.
Yes, become a Manhattan bartender. Which I did for 8 years. And I could keep track of everybody, all the waiters and waitresses, keep track of everybody who came in the restaurant, keep track of every drink. So when someone came in, I was at Chumley's in those days. Someone came in, and Chumley's a great speakeasy, open since the 20s, and if you didn't know where it was, you couldn't find it. It was always packed. I was Saturday night bartender. When someone would come in, they said, no, I'm next. And I would go, no, you're not. So I'm being a little bit flippant with this, but it's multitasking. It's my point about the bartending. A bartender is a multitasker. And so any kind of multitasking helps, And if you've never done any multitasking like bartending or something, or running a children's classroom, which is multitasking for sure. Then, when people are training with me, I say to them, it's a multi-group. I say, look at the musicians, focus on them for 30 seconds or a minute, right? Something like that. Then leave them with something, and then go to the next discipline. Same idea, 30 seconds to a minute. Usually 30 seconds, and then go to the next discipline. Then go to the next one if you're working with 4, and then come back. Let's go back to the musicians. I got to get back to them. So that's what you do. Because a multidisciplinary sound painter, you're responsible for all that's going on the stage, and all that's going on the stage is at the end is you have realized your composition. So if you forget somebody over here, it really puts a hole in the composition. And for me, as a teaching this language to composers, that's what's called dropping the ball. You've dropped the ball. You've lost the flow of the composition because you've not paid attention to what this person's doing. So yeah, you want to spend a little time with each one and take a risk. Last night in the performance, we did a really wonderful performance with Strike Anywhere, And Tomi Sunudo was up there first, and then to work with Strike Anywhere and compose like a 10-minute piece. Then I composed about a 10-minute piece, and then Lise Walker, the sound painter for the group and the founder of the group, composed a 15 to 20-minute piece. I took a big risk at the end of the piece because I asked Crystal Marie, I don't know if anybody can see it, but I asked Crystal Marie contact with me to end the piece. I wasn't planning that as an ending, but I knew I was time-wise coming around to my 12 minutes that I wanted to do. So I don't know if you saw it, but Crystal Marie was like, what am I supposed to do, kind of? So, I had her stand up, contact with me. I brought it towards me, and she had like this very menacing face on, And then, now I had been aware of everything going on at that point. I had the balance of me for the composition. I had this, I had that going on, I had this going on. It was all balanced. It's not like I forgot something over there. I'm aware of everything going on all the time because I've been doing this for so many years, right? So I've become very comfortable with that. And so anyways, there she was coming at me and going back. But it was actually contact with me, like she could have come up and grabbed me, pushed me away. The sound painter's role isn't precious. You can become part of the composition, which sometimes I do. A piece in Brussels, I got yanked off my feet and dragged around the stage on my stomach. Lise Walker pushed me into the audience one time, but it's part of the piece, and I landed on this woman's lap. But I have a dance background, so I know how to not hurt people when they land on their lap, So it was a comfortable land, So, but I'm aware of everything going on all the time, and I never know what the ending is going to be. The ending kind of just, if I think 12 minutes, I kind of fold it up at that time. I just automatically go to the ending. And when I had Crystal Marie was like coming up, back up, I stuck that up back, and then I just melted her down to the floor and stuck that, and that wound up being for me the end of the piece. I didn't plan it, That's your first question, right?
Yeah, in the meantime, a 1A is popped up. You can simply say no if that's the answer. Did you ever experience that, or you think about that actually listening to music has a different time need than watching theater? Like theater time and music time is a bit different. Did you ever experience that, or you feel that multidisciplinary piece has its own timing and it's not like...
You mean in sound painting?
Yeah.
You mean so...
Well, I mean comparing to not sound painting maybe, but you just listen to music, or you watch a theater, and if you watch a sound painting show where both are present. I mean,
I'm not sure I get the question. So it's like, does it do something different to time for me if I'm watching, say, looking at a piece of Ives or something, listening to a piece of Ives compared to listening to a piece of musicians?
No. I mean,
doing sound painting?
I feel that a musical time, how fast the time in music can go or how slow and so on, it's a totally different flow as in a theater. How much time you need for a situation, for something. It's a different speed of time somehow, or different control of the speed of time.
Right, and I guess I don't feel that difference because I'm completely comfortable making a piece only with actors, only with dancers, only with visual artists, only with musicians. So when I put them all together and do a big multi-piece, each discipline moves in the same flow of time for me.
Okay.
The same speed.
Yeah.
And I think that's because of my experience doing it. Maybe, and if I watch a theater piece or listen, like I'm watching something, going to a theater work and I'm watching it, then I go to a concert and I watch it. I think for me the feeling of that flow is the same speed.
Okay. No, I mean, how often new information needs to be there? But I understand. So it's then I go to the second question. The second question is different. It's your relationship with Braxton, and also his language music, or the because I always thought that the House of the Triangle is a little bit improvisation. If I sign improvisation, I always think of language triangle in a way. So somehow it comes up to me. But so how was it? That's just a question.
When I met Anthony Braxton,
and how you see the sound painting and language music are there any similarities, or it's just because I think the archetypal thinking, is a way of comparison.
No, there is a relationship. I mean, I was attracted. Often we are attracted to things in the art that we already have inside of ourselves, and that's why we're attracted to a certain teacher or to a certain way of learning something about a discipline. It already exists in us. So when I met Anthony Braxton, I'd already heard his music before, and when I learned he was moving to Woodstock after leaving Paris with Circle, the group Circle of Chick Coreas. He moved to Woodstock. I heard he was coming there. I called him on the phone, and I believe I might have been his first student ever, because he said, "I don't teach," and I said, "You will teach me." So I got a grant from the New York State Council, from National Endowment of the Arts. He helped me get that, and I studied with him for the next 8 years. But at one point, such a kind, caring, warm man, the lessons were free, but not until I beat him in badminton. And he beat me. My lessons became more expensive because we bet. And so my lessons were super expensive for a long time. And I grew up playing tennis, and I'm like, he can't beat me. But badminton, birdie's different. And he had a great drop shot. So I finally caught on, and he never beat me after that for the next, 20 years. So this man and I had a very close relationship. I studied woodwinds with him. I'm a pianist. I also play woodwinds and percussion instruments. But I have a background in dance, theater, and the visual arts. I was really interested in alternate notation, and Anthony was working with a lot of different ways to notate. Besides like his aesthetic, which attracted the hell out of me. This was just amazing. He was taking improvisation, and when he first did a solo saxophone concert back in the 60s, he told me that he could only do about 10 minutes before he ran out of ideas. And it was embarrassing for him, like, oh my gosh. And he went back home, and then he started to take improvisation apart. Like, what are the elements of improvisation? And he started to create the foundation for language musics. And there were signs in that. Now, I didn't study those signs, but I knew about language musics, and I certainly knew about his concepts of how to compose or how to think in improvisation, etc. And the fact that he had taken improvisation apart, like what does it work, inspired me. Now, I created the language outside of that. I created the language really kind of only in the beginning of my studies with him. And I think that was based on because at Berklee I had been exposed to, there was one teacher where we would play paintings. He put paintings up, we would play paintings, And then we had like notation by Robert Moran and other people that used other alternate forms of notation. So an alternate form of notation for me was starting to like grow in my head. And for me, this is notation. It's just notation with the body, And Anthony's way of looking at music, his openness in my composing side of the lesson, it spoke to me. And so when I started to develop sound painting, once I got those first few signs going, I never told him about it. He didn't even know I was doing that, really. I was doing it on my own. I didn't bring it to the lesson. But it was influenced by language musics, like that he was breaking down things. I started to break down things not just coming from music, but coming from life. Like coming and going comes from watching two crowds passing on a sidewalk in Times Square. And one person in each crowd trying to communicate with each other, but the crowds were so thick they couldn't get to each other, and hence that born coming and going. This comes from soccer, the public in soccer. This comes from, I don't know, just pointing. Anita O'Day used to point at people to give, you take 4 bars, you take 4. I didn't get it from Anita O'Day, but that kind of existed, pointing at people to play, So yes, I was influenced by Anthony, and but I was also somehow, live composing spoke to me more than any other way to compose. And like I was saying earlier in this talk, that I really felt like I was cheating. And I thought it was so easy to do until I asked my late friend and wonderful guy, Rob Hinkey, a great trumpeter, to come up and try it. He was the first one to ever try it. It was before Todd Reynolds asked me. It was way back in the 80s. Hey, Rob, give it a go. And he came up, and he couldn't do it. And that was the first time I understood, oh, there's a discipline there's a real study you have to do. I thought, this is easy, anybody can do it, so I didn't tell anybody about it. Keep this to me as a private thing. And then Rob came up and he tried to do it, and he just couldn't do it at all. That's when I really realized that, that it had grown into this thing. But I digress. Yes, so yeah, answer your question, it did influence me.
Yeah, I think the
Anthony.
archetypal thinking, like there's language one is like one tone in a way, so that's,
Right.
that's just,
And I'm not sure, and I got lucky, and Anthony worked with me in the, 2011 or something like that. We did
2009.
2009.
I don't know.
Right, we did
The 6 concerts.
the 6 concerts. And I saw him do lock-in improv, and I thought, where did you get that sign?
The triangle is the square and the circle.
This is what I use for improv.
I know, yes. So, that's,
So I wrote that down in my charts, improv section, just put the bars and then a triangle. So I would have to show my compositions to Anthony, and he was very gracious in telling me that sometimes he took a little bit from me. And that was the best compliment ever. When I heard something I wrote one time in one of his recordings, because as we were going through the piece, Anthony, don't come after me now. As we were going through the piece, he was working on the Arista Big Band for orchestra, the really great record where he has a big band. What's that? Creative orchestra music. And so I think he was looking for an ending or something for one piece. And I was showing him a composition in my lesson, and I saw his eyes go bing. And then I heard that ending. It's on the babu deep, and that's in one of his pieces. And of course that's a very common rhythm, but the way his eyes lit up, I thought, wait a minute. So what a great compliment for such a great man, great composer to steal from me. How much we got? Oh, I'm out of time. So anyway, thank you, everybody out there in the streaming world. And always if you ever have any questions about sound painting, just contact me. Thanks.